Well, we started this week talking a lot about the Cubs, so it's only right we end the week talking a lot about the Cubs, who you have a couple trade ideas with coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, July 5th, 2024. This is Titan Gonzalez and Colby Batnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, it's Fanfiction Friday, the show where you submit your Mariners trade ideas and Colby and I react to them. Before we get into this week's batch, shout out to our title sponsor today, Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. We are going to kick off Fanfiction Friday here with Tyler, who has a deal with the Colorado Rockies. Mariners get Brendan Rodgers and Elias Diaz for Michael Arroyo, Jonathan Clase, and Taylor Dollard.
Are we still doing this with Brendan Rodgers? Like, are we still pretending that he's a thing? Because he's just kind of a dude. Like, he's
another
whatever.
sub 100 WRC plus season. It's a good defender.
Yeah, I mean, like,
he does hit for a high average. I will mention that. Like, it's not a high WRC plus. It's not a league average WRC plus, but 281, 322, 402. That's not a bad slash line.
not terrible, but I'd rather have Dylan Moore. Like, I don't think Brendan Rodgers does anything for you. And Diaz
You could have both, to be fair.
You could, but, then how would Ryan Bliss get playing time? Oh, well, he's not getting it anyways, but
right.
Yeah,
Brendan Rodgers cannot get playing time.
Yeah. Diaz, pretty interesting, but he's only got a couple months left, and he is the backup catcher. So you're talking about giving up a really good prospect in Arroyo for a guy who's probably going to start 15 games, and then Brendan Rodgers. I think there's a better allocation of resources here. Dollard, I don't think he has any value. He hasn't pitched in like 2 years now. And Clase, I don't really care if they give up Clase. I do think that he is a piece that has some value here. So I think the Rockies would probably want something like this. I don't know if the Mariners would want something like this. And, it's interesting. It's two guys we really haven't talked about. We talked about Diaz a little bit, but two guys we haven't really talked about. And, Rodgers, I'm not excited about him at all, but he makes contact. He's a pretty good defender. Like, I can see why he would be kind of an appealing piece to a lot of people. But to me, if I'm giving up Arroyo, I want more than a below average bat and a 2-month rental backup catcher if I'm going to give up Arroyo. So from the Mariners side of things, I'm really out on this. But for these two players, this might be about what it costs, because there are going to be teams who want Diaz to be their starting catcher down the stretch. And so you're going to have to bid against teams who are looking for a starting catcher for your backup catcher. So, all kidding aside here, pretty interesting. But I just think Arroyo is just a little too much for me to give up for these two guys.
Rodgers also is like way better at Coors Field than he is on the road. Now, Coors Field doesn't help you put the ball in play more often.
No.
So that doesn't really apply to him because he's not a power reliant hitter. So I don't really care too much about the Coors splits. But yeah, I'm just like, he's fine. And Elias Diaz, like, how much is that important to you? How much is backup catcher important specifically to the Mariners? I mean, how much is that filling that with someone like an Elias Diaz important to them? Especially when they have Garver, who right now he's not producing offensively with any sort of consistency. So you need to get something out of him.
Like, look, I understand it's like troubling to try and trust Mitch Garver to stay healthy. But if he's a true backup catcher and he's going to DH sometimes, he's going to play like 2 or 3 times a week. I think I can trust him to stay relatively healthy. So I don't think I'm putting a lot of stock in a catcher only type. Like, if we're talking like Danny Jansen, who could also DH and help you there, like, fine, whatever. But to me, I don't think I'm going to place a high. I don't think backup catcher is going to place super high on my list of priorities at the deadline. So yeah, Diaz, like him. I think he'd be a really good backup. I don't see the Mariners getting involved there unless something happens to Cal in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm not super interested in the deal, but I think, we're talking about a controllable position player in Brendan Rodgers. We're talking about a really solid catcher who a lot of teams are going to be looking at to start this summer. I think the valuation is pretty much spot on. I think it's an interesting deal with a couple of players that we haven't really talked much about. I'd probably give you a 55 to 60 on this. I just wouldn't do the deal. Like, I just don't really like it from the Mariners perspective, but I think you're like pretty on point with it.
Yeah, I just think because like the Mariners are going to say no to this, I can't give it more than a 50. But yeah, no, I think the valuation is at least in the ballpark.
All right. This trade comes from also Tyler, but a different Tyler. This is a deal with Toronto. Davis Schneider for Michael Arroyo and Taylor Dollard. You guys really want to trade Michael Arroyo and some reason think that Taylor Dollard has trade value? Okay. What do we think about essentially Michael Arroyo for Davis Schneider?
Not a huge, Schneider fan. I know a lot of people out there really think that he's like this really fun and awesome player, and it's like he's really not hitting right now. He really hasn't hit for a while. Yeah, sure. I mean, he could play multiple positions, and I mean, you've seen him more than I have, so this is probably more of a trade for you to break down. But I mean, like I'd probably rather just have Dylan Moore in the role that I'm trying to acquire Schneider to fill. So Arroyo, I think people are undervaluing Arroyo a little bit. So
yeah,
to me, no, I don't think Schneider like moves the needle enough for me to trade Arroyo for him. If the Mariners made that deal, I'd be like, okay, like I get what they're going for. I see what they're trying to do. But I think that they should aim a little higher for Arroyo, and I just don't trust Schneider to hit enough to make him a big part of my deadline. Now maybe you're not. Maybe he's the third guy you acquire. But if you're giving up Arroyo, it kind of feels like he's probably at least your second best bat that you're gonna, or he's your second best bat minimum that you're going to acquire. So yeah, it's a no from me, but I understand the thought process behind it. Certainly.
I think Davis Schneider's Linsanity run, for lack of a better term, is over.
Yeah.
I think he came up, he caught fire, and then, he obviously well-deserved made the opening day roster this year, and now he's just kind of a league average bat. He can hit some bombs. Like,
sure.
He's got the aura, right, with the stash, and he's kind of a fun clubhouse guy, and there's obviously that kind of comes into play here, but overall, like, is he a good player? I think he's an average
I think he's
player.
Useful.
Yeah, I think he's a useful average role player.
He's kind of Jose Caballero. Like, they do it differently, but that's just kind of who they are. There's there's some vibe stuff here, and there's some clubhouse stuff, and there's some versatility, and he does a couple things at the plate pretty well.
Yeah.
Do I want to build my lineup around him? No.
I think you can get better from Michael Arroyo.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I get the valuation on both of these deals, both for Rodgers, even though Rodgers only has a year and a half left. It's still a controllable bat in this market. And then Schneider has several years left of club control. And again, is a slightly above league average hitter. It's a 104 WRC plus right now. I think that's roughly, again, in this market with that context, probably what the Blue Jays would ask for, and probably what it would take for them to actually say yes on a Schneider deal, because they don't have to trade, right? But if I'm the Mariners, I'm out on that. I think he can do better for Michael Arroyo. It might be a player that has far less club control, but brings more impact than Schneider does, and maybe gives you more of an everyday option than Schneider does as well. So I'll go 50 on it. I can see the vision, but again, like with the Rockies deal, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, doesn't move the needle enough for me to be super excited about it.
Yeah. All right, we are going to go over more of your trades in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Booking.com and eBay Motors. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, I'm talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. Even a Mariners fan can have a great time down in Houston, whether you're watching Cal Raleigh hit one into the Crawford boxes or chowing down on some authentic Texas barbecue. Maybe you're doing both at the same time. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or the Booking.com app. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Again, that is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch the M's and the Blue Jays tonight and over the course of the weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast for SiriusXM via the SXM app. Final home series before the All-Star break, and hopefully the Mariners keep the good vibes going from yesterday's win and keep this thing going and start a little bit of a win streak before they hit the road. All right, let's get back into your trades here on Fanfiction Friday. Udonis Haslem has a deal with the Chicago Cubs in which the Mariners acquire Ian Happ and Hayden Wisniewski, who's a pitcher, for Dom Canzone, Michael Arroyo, Ty Pete, and Ben Williamson. So it's a pretty substantial package from the Mariners, but you are trying to acquire a controllable pitcher who can both start and work out of the bullpen, and Ian Happ, who's got a couple of years left of club control at $20 million a piece. So what do you think?
It feels like for this deal to go down, the Cubs would have to really, really care about getting payroll, because I think they're leaving some talent on the table by trading Ian Happ for this package, while also including the young arm to go with it. Like, first of all, I would say Dom Canzone. Cubs probably not a team that's going to be interested in him. They're trying to clear up space in their outfield so that they could play Pete Crow Armstrong regularly. So also possibly Morel. So the MLB ready outfielder, probably not that appealing to the Cubs, but maybe. I mean, can't say no outright, but they do have other first base options and DH options as well. So Dom Canzone, probably not a good piece in this deal. I mean, like in a vacuum, Canzone for Wisniewski is like interesting. But again, the Cubs don't really need an outfielder. So that part makes it a little bit difficult. But even if we just pair up Canzone and the arm, throw them out of this, Happ for Arroyo, Pete, and Williamson feels a little bulky more so than upside, but Happ is making some serious money. And so we know that there are teams who are going to look at Ian Happ's contract and just say, we're out. Like we just can't add that salary to our payroll. And the Mariners might be one of them. They've said that that's not going to be the case, but you know,
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Standard boilerplate. Like, yeah. Yep. So yeah, this feels a little for 2.5 years of Ian Happ. He's a good player, not a great player. It feels more bulk. I think that the Cubs are going to be like, okay, well, what if instead of Arroyo and Pete, you give us, Farmello or whatever, right? Like, I think that's what the Cubs would prefer. But again, it sounds like they want to clear some salary. Obviously, Happ is making $20 million a year. That's going to limit the amount of suitors he has. So I feel like this is really close, like in terms of like what both sides would be willing to do. I feel like the thing that's, kind of holding this up is the inclusion of the arm, Wisniewski. Like, He's got a lot of club control left, but he's not really taking that big step like the Cubs were hoping. Is he a reliever? Is he a starter?
Yeah.
I don't know how the Cubs are going to value that.
Yeah, he's pretty average,
right.
generally speaking.
But he's got club control. So even an average club control pitcher at the deadline is going to carry some significant value.
I mean, look at what Aaron Savale, what a year and a half of Aaron Savale went for. I mean, obviously Savale has track record, but like this year he's been really mediocre, but he still got the Rays a very interesting prospect, a 20-year-old middle infielder who's hitting right now in high A. So
kind of Michael Arroyo-ish type of guy.
So pitching of any kind is going to cost you something decent.
Right. So I feel like the Cubs might look at this and say it's a little light. If I'm the Mariners, because of the salary and because Happ is just merely a good player, not an all-star, I'm kind of looking at this and being like, do I want to add more than this? Because if I add his $20 million, that's going to prevent me from doing something else, possibly going after more upside. So kind of a really difficult needle to thread here, just because I'm not really sure how the Mariners payroll stacks up. I'm not really sure how desperate the Cubs are to move off of Happ. But in this deal, like if they just want to get rid of one of their outfielders, they're getting two. Well, I would say Pete has tremendous upside, but he's a complete, question mark overall. Williamson, probably not an everyday player, but looks like a pretty decent, kind of utility infield type of guy who can play really good third, might even be able to play second or short.
Yeah.
There's some power that's
also
developing.
Should be able to make his debut here in the next year.
Probably. There's some power developing there. And then Arroyo, as we know, is just really like just an advanced hitter for his age.
And he's answered a lot of questions. Yeah.
He's growing into his power, and it looks like he's going to be able to stay on the dirt. Probably not shortstop, but second or third, both look totally possible. And if he's going to be an above average bat who can play second base, that's really valuable. So it's really tough to judge here, because you're giving up like three prospects who are probably 45 to 50s in prospect circles right now for a major league player who's like a 52, 53, give or take, who's making money like he's a 55, 56. So really difficult trade to kind of wrap your head around, but it probably means it's in the ballpark.
I would pay this price for Ian Happ if they were taking on like Jorge Polanco. If you want Arroyo, if you want Pete, if you want Williamson, who again might be able to help you as soon as next year, and Canzone on top of that as well. Wisniewski isn't really important to me. Like I can live with or without Hayden Wisniewski.
I wouldn't want to pay more. So like if Wisniewski is what's causing me to add Ty P to this deal, just take them both out. You know what I mean? Like if you're telling me I could have Happ for Arroyo and Williamson, fine, done.
Yeah.
Or Pete and Williamson, fine. I don't know, I'm giving it a 50. Like it's really interesting. We could really probably talk all show about it, but
yeah,
I'll give it a 50. It's pretty good, pretty solid.
Yeah, I'll go 50. I'll go 55 actually on it. All right, well, we're going to go over a couple more of your trades here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Tax Network USA and Ibata. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibata and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibata, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and a whole lot more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibata to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the M's and the Blue Jays tonight and over the course of the weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. We got a couple more trades from you guys here on Fanfiction Friday. Next trade here comes from Braxton. Mariners get Luis Rengifo and Carlos Estevez from the Angels for Luis Sweetspell, Tyler Guff, Ben Williamson, and Teddy McGraw.
It's too bulky. No, Estevez is making some money, and I believe he is a rental this year, if I'm not mistaken. Rengifo has a year after this year, so you're getting him for two pennant races, but he's having a really good year. Just hit the IL with some wrist soreness, and as we know, hand, wrist, finger injuries for hitters, little shaky there, but Rengifo's a solid player. He makes a lot of contact. He's got some pop. He can play multiple positions. I like Rengifo's fit in this lineup because he doesn't strike out really at all. And he's going to hit for a pretty good average. He's going to walk enough to get on base. And there, like I said, there's surprising power. He slugged 444 over his last, over his last 650 plate appearances, basically a full year. Is he an everyday player? Is he the guy that you want to be your everyday second baseman on a good team? Maybe you might be able to get away with it. You probably want to do better, but for a couple months here, as you try and kind of just, figure out what to do at that position. Yeah. Rengifo is the guy that I think makes a lot of sense. He crushes left-handed pitching, which is a nice bonus. He's a switch hitter. So I like Rengifo. Like I said, plays third, can play second, has some time even at shortstop, a little bit of time even in the outfield. He's just a really fun player, and he's having a bit of a career year this year. Yep. He's only 27 years old, and he will be all year. But again, he called up early. He only has a year and a half left of club control. So that's still a valuable player, particularly in this market where there's going to be so many buyers. I don't think you're going to get Rengifo and Estevez, who's also going to have pretty significant interest because he's coming off of a great month and all that. Yeah. I don't think you're going to get both of those guys combined for bulk, particularly from the Angels, which is another wrench that gets thrown into this mix that makes it really difficult to, negotiate a trade here.
Yeah, Rengifo's in the middle of a career year right now, and whether you think that's an outlier or not doesn't really matter here. That's how the Angels are going to sell him. He's a 127 WRC plus bat with club control. He's only 27 years old. That's going to cost you quite a bit here. That's going to cost you. That's going to cost you more than the in-half.
I think so. Plus he's cheaper, literally money wise.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be their all-star representative this year.
Him and Tyler Anderson.
Yeah. So maybe Estevez too. I like Rengifo a lot. I do think that the Angels are a team. If you're looking to offload a Ryan Bliss or a Dom Canzone, I actually think the Angels are a good team to do that with, to give them a young major leaguer who they could play for the rest of the year and see what they have. But I think if they're going to trade you Rengifo, they're going to be like, yeah, no problem. Give us Johnny Farmel. And it's like, no, not doing that. Like,
Yeah.
the least I could see you giving them would be like a Locklear or a Arroyo, and then probably like a Bliss or a Canzone, and then probably something like Brandon Garcia or maybe Emerson Hancock or somebody like that. So I do think you could get away with some bulk here, but you're still going to have to give away a headliner that's going to hurt a little bit. So
Yeah.
I just think the valuation's off on this one.
Yeah, so I think the valuation's off for Rengifo and loan, and then you throw in Estevez into the mix. Yeah, I just I would probably go 35 on this.
I'd give it a 40 because the valuation is really far off. But again, I do like the idea of Rengifo. I do think Estevez is, going to be a name that we're not talking about a ton, who would absolutely kind of, he falls into that mix, right? A little bit better than Stanek, not as good as Munoz. That's kind of what we've been asking for. So I like the idea. I like the idea of packaging them together. I think the Mariners and the Angels are actually really good, like solid, like trade fits when you look at their rosters and where they're at in their build.
Totally.
Unfortunately, Artie Moreno is, what's the nice word to say?
I mean, he's petty.
Sure, let's go with petty. That's a word that won't get us demonetized. He's very petty man, very petty little man. So I don't think he's going to allow any trades to happen between these two ball clubs. But you never know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, with Ward and Estevez and Rengifo and like, there's some other arms in that bullpen that I also think would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Even maybe somebody like Detmers and again, like I said, I think the Angels, they're primed to go out and ask for a Locklear or a Bliss or or maybe a Logan Evans. Like, I think there's a really good fit here between these two teams. It's just that, what's the word we decided to use for Moreno? Petty?
Petty, yeah.
It's probably going to prevent anything serious from happening. So it's a bummer, but.
This one comes from Quinn. It's another deal with the Cubs. This time it's for Cody Bellinger as well as Ethan Roberts for Jonathan Clase, Dom Canzone, and Michael Morales. And Quinn says this is assuming the Cubs treat Bellinger as a rental. And yeah, that's still a thing that I'm trying to kind of figure out here with Cody Bellinger and how the Cubs are going to view him. Because, like, yeah, on one hand, in theory, yeah, you could sell him as, he has a couple of years left of control. That should be valuable to you. But then the other team is probably looking at Cody Bellinger and what he's done this year, which is like, last time I checked, it was a 109 WRC plus. You combine that with how dreadful he was in his last 2 years with the Dodgers. You kind of look at last year and think, well, was last year just the outlier? I don't want to pay $27.5 million for a slightly above average bat.
Well, and it's not club control; it's Bellinger control. Like, so, yeah, it's like honestly, think about this. Like, let's say you make a trade for Bellinger, and he's roughly what he has been this year for the rest of the year for you. Do you want him to opt into that $27 million 1 year deal for a 109 WRC plus guy? Probably not. Not when you already know you're going to have some kind of budget restraint. So, like, it's tough, man. And like I said, I think Bellinger, we said this all week, I think Bellinger's swing and like his, like what he does really well fits T-Mobile Park beautifully. Would I pay $27 million a year for it? No.
I think they have to take Mitch Haniger in this deal.
Yeah.
Because like the more that I've thought about it, because he's going to take that player option.
I guess the hope would be if he did decline is like, look, am I going to get $27 million a year? No, but can I go get 6 and 100? Like, maybe, and maybe he wants to do that instead of trying to rebound in Seattle and then being like, another year older, I got 27 million this year. Well, now I have to make up X amount from what I didn't get on the free agent market next year. Can I still get 6 and 120 if I play a year in Seattle? Like, I don't know how they're going to want to work that. So really interesting. Bellinger is just, I'm fascinated to see what happens to Cody Bellinger, if anything.
Yeah. So on this deal specifically, what do you think? Because we're talking about Clase, Canzone, Morales for Bellinger, and Ethan Roberts, who's a controllable mid-leverage reliever at best. He only has like 9 career innings at the big league level. It's not like a significant package going to Chicago. And again, this is from Quinn's point of view, kind of contingent upon the Cubs treating Bellinger and his value as if he were.
I think the problem with this package in particular is what we talked about with the Happ package is that the Cubs don't want outfield help, right? They have too many outfielders. They want to clear a space for Pete Crow Armstrong. So by giving them Canzone and Clase, both of whom are on the 40-man already, they're not really getting a ton. Morales is interesting. He's taken a step forward this year, and he is certainly going to rise up prospect ranks. And I think he's kind of back on track on being like a legitimate prospect instead of just org depth, which is kind of what it looked like he was headed towards. Yeah. So I think Morales would be an interesting piece for the Cubs. Canzone and Clase, I don't think they do anything for Chicago. So I still think, if you get Bellinger for the player he is right now, I think you're looking at something like Morales and Bliss, Morales and Arroyo, like Morales and, somebody in that 9 to 16 range in prospect ranks. I think, again, if we're assuming that the Cubs are going to treat him like an expensive rental, money-wise, which he is, then I think that, Morales and somebody like Ryan Bliss would make a good amount of sense for both sides. And at the high end, I think it's like Morales and Locklear. But if you're the Mariners, it's like, do we want to trade Locklear for 2 months of Cody Bellinger? It's so hard to pin down Cody Bellinger's trade value. I feel like this is a little too much like, hey, here's some garbage. And I mean, I know Canzone's not garbage, but you know what I'm saying? Like, here's players we're not going to use, like, get rid of them. And we're just going to take Cody Bellinger essentially for free. And it's like, I don't think you're going to get that. But I do think Morales is a good, like, second or third piece in a Bellinger deal. So, it's so hard to nail down the Bellinger value that, it's tough to get too critical of anybody's idea on this as long as it's not, like, ridiculous. And I don't think this is ridiculous. I just think that the Cubs aren't the team that you're going to try and pawn off a couple of 40-man outfielders on.
Yeah, I don't have a great evaluation on this because there's so many variables with Bellinger. I'll give it a 50.
I'd probably still give it a 45. I think the valuation, just the two outfielders, is just the Cubs aren't going to be interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, they're already finding ways to play Pete Crow Armstrong. But
it's easier.
Yeah, it is easier. But you eliminate Bellinger from the equation. Maybe they are able to also trade Ian Happ. But again, variables, right? We're talking about hypotheticals on hypotheticals. Like, there is a way where this works. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'll just give it a 50 because I don't feel great about it one way or the other. Well, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your trades. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.